Have you ever stopped to wonder what truly happens behind closed doors when a narcissist is left entirely to their own devices? Picture for a moment the individual who dazzles everyone with their effortless charm, the person who commands every room they enter with an undeniable sense of confidence and superiority. Now, try to imagine that same person revealing a version of themselves so unsettling, so completely stripped of all their carefully cultivated social polish, that it leaves you feeling both deeply disturbed and strangely sorrowful. When the outside world is not watching, the true nature of a narcissist often comes to the surface, exposing patterns of behavior that most people would find difficult to believe could even exist. Today, we are taking a deep dive into one of the most fascinating and occasionally unsettling topics within the field of personality disorders. We are exploring the strange and often revolting things that narcissists tend to do when they are completely alone. This is not a conversation meant to judge or mock anyone. Instead, this is about gaining a deeper understanding of the impulses that drive these hidden behaviors. These are the kinds of actions that grow over years of deep-seated insecurity, complex emotional manipulation, and a desperate, burning need to remain in total control of their environment. What you're about to discover might fundamentally change the way you view the nature of narcissism. Throughout this discussion, we are going to explore these patterns in careful detail, bringing together insights from clinical psychology, personal observation, and a wide array of real-life stories. I encourage you to stay with me until the very end as we slowly peel back the many layers of narcissistic behavior to reveal what actually transpires in the quiet solitude of their private world. It is a world that, despite appearing glamorous and polished from the outside, is frequently filled with dark rituals and deeply disturbing personal habits. These strange private moments function as both a psychological defense mechanism and a quiet cry for validation. They serve as a reflection of just how fractured the inner life of a narcissist truly is. Welcome to this exploration of the hidden and often uncomfortable behaviors that narcissists display when they are convinced that no one is watching them. I invite you to walk through this topic with me, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of genuine curiosity and awareness. Understanding what they do in their most private moments provides us with essential insight into what truly drives their manipulation, their constant need for praise, and their endless internal battles. Before we begin, please take a moment to support our work by subscribing, liking this video, and sharing it with those who might find it helpful to understand these complex psychological dynamics. By doing so, you are helping to build a space that values truth, empathy, and the process of healing. This is a space where we can learn together and bring light to behaviors that usually remain hidden in the shadows. Now, let us start this journey by taking a much closer look at what actually happens when a narcissist no longer has an audience to perform for. When they are left in solitude, the constant stream of external validation they crave so desperately simply disappears. What remains is a tense battle between the public mask they have spent a lifetime crafting and the fractured reality of their private self. It is precisely in that silence that their most unsettling habits begin to emerge. One of the first things to understand is their complex, almost haunting relationship with their own reflection. When left to their own devices, many narcissists engage in what can only be described as a ritual of intense self-admiration. They spend long, uninterrupted stretches of time staring directly into the mirror. They are not merely fixing their hair or checking to see if they look presentable. They are actively performing for themselves. They might whisper praises to their own reflection, recite elaborate affirmations, harshly criticize the smallest of perceived imperfections, or even record various videos and photos to analyze in minute detail later. To an outside observer who might accidentally witness this, the scene could appear ridiculous, or perhaps even profoundly sad. But for the narcissist, this is a vital and necessary ritual. The mirror effectively becomes their silent audience, a stand-in for the constant admiration they crave but cannot seem to live without. When no one else is there to feed their ego, they turn their focus entirely inward, creating a self-sustaining loop of endless preoccupation. It is a strange, obsessive, and repetitive act that reveals just how fragile their internal sense of self-worth actually is. Psychological studies on the nature of narcissism have long demonstrated that this urgent need to constantly reaffirm one's worth is one of the defining characteristics of the disorder. The mirror, in a very literal sense, becomes a lifeline. It is a tool they use to maintain the grand illusion of perfection, even when the outside world is nowhere to be found. Endless grooming, the deliberate posing, and the intense self-praise might seem like mere vanity on the surface, but it is actually a desperate attempt to hold together a crumbling identity that has been built entirely on the foundation of outside admiration and control. Once the mirror ritual finally comes to an end, another disturbing pattern often begins to take its place. Many narcissists spend significant time talking to themselves in private, swinging wildly between extremes of self-glorification and deep self-hatred. This is not a healthy form of gentle self-reflection. It is more akin to a private, chaotic performance filled with stark contradictions. In one moment, they might be bragging aloud about their own brilliance, their immense power, or their magnetic charm. The very next moment, they might be cursing themselves for any small failure, perceived humiliation, or minor flaw they happen to notice. Sometimes, they even go as far as to speak about themselves in the third person, acting as if they are both the glorious hero and the cruel critic in their own twisted life story. This kind of inner dialogue might sound strange to those on the outside, but it is incredibly common among those with narcissistic traits. It exposes the very truth they try so hard to hide from everyone else, which is that their grand, untouchable confidence is often just a fragile mask covering up deep, painful, and persistent insecurity. Psychologists often describe this as the ongoing war between their ideal self, which is the perfect, untouchable version they try to project to the world, and their real self, which they secretly despise and fear. When they are finally alone, there is nobody there to provide the distraction they need to avoid that painful inner conflict. Therefore, they argue with themselves, they boast to themselves, and they tear themselves apart, all within the silent confines of their own mind. It is both a tragic and a deeply disturbing reality because it reveals just how unstable their inner world is when they do not have others to anchor them. However, their private life certainly does not stop at mirrors and erratic self-talk. In our modern, interconnected digital world, narcissists have found a way to replace real, face-to-face validation with the promise of virtual admiration. When they are left to their own company, many of them spend hours obsessively scrolling through their own social media pages, watching how the world responds to their content, and constantly comparing their lives to everyone else. They meticulously check old pictures and comments, keep a tally of the likes and shares they receive, and sometimes even spend time stalking the profiles of people who once admired them or who have dared to criticize them. This behavior can quickly become a full-blown addiction, creating a toxic cycle of hope followed by crushing disappointment. Every new notification gives them a brief, intense emotional high. Every hour that passes without a response feels like a stinging personal rejection. Because their self-worth depends so heavily on this constant stream of external praise, they become trapped in a digital loop of constant checking and emotional instability. Researchers have found that social media can be especially damaging for people with narcissistic traits because it feeds them exactly what they crave: attention, envy, and a sense of control, while simultaneously deepening the hollow emptiness they are desperately trying to escape. Consequently, when a narcissist is alone, their smartphone becomes their new favorite mirror, and the endless, mindless scrolling becomes a form of silent, self-inflicted torture. Another dark and deeply unsettling behavior that narcissists often engage in when they are left completely alone is the act of fantasizing about revenge. They spend time replaying past moments in their minds when they feel they were embarrassed or rejected by someone, and they spend hours imagining elaborate ways to regain their sense of control. These revenge fantasies can become incredibly detailed and intense. They might sit in the silence and picture dramatic confrontations, imagined victories, or even the suffering of the people they blame for their perceived pain. Sometimes they go further and write these dark fantasies down on paper or record angry voice memos that they know no one else will ever hear. These private acts of rage serve a specific purpose, giving them a fleeting, artificial sense of power when they feel they are otherwise powerless. It is a way for them to rewrite history so that they always come out on top. In their minds, they are the ones delivering the final blow or the cutting remark that leaves the other person devastated. This allows them to avoid the pain of feeling vulnerable or wounded. By living in this fantasy world of retribution, they maintain the illusion that they are the ones who hold all the cards, even if in reality, the person they are targeting has long since moved on with their life. This habit of ruminating on past grievances is incredibly exhausting for the brain, yet it is a cornerstone of how many narcissists cope with the reality of their own shortcomings. They are unable to process feelings of disappointment or hurt in a healthy, constructive way. Instead, they choose to fester, letting these feelings grow into complex stories of victimhood and retaliation. It is a cycle that keeps them perpetually trapped in the past, unable to grow or develop deeper connections with the people around them. When they are alone, this obsession with settling scores becomes their primary entertainment and their way of processing the world. Beyond their internal thoughts, there are also physical habits that can be quite revealing. Some narcissists develop very rigid, almost compulsive routines in their private space that seem designed to isolate them further from the messy reality of genuine human connection. They might spend hours organizing their possessions into perfect, untouchable displays, ensuring that every object in their home reflects the image of the person they want to be. They might constantly rearrange furniture, clean things that are already clean, or throw away items that have sentimental value simply because they do not fit the specific aesthetic they are trying to project to themselves. It is as if they are curating a museum of their own life, where they are both the curator and the only visitor allowed inside. This behavior is another way for them to exert control in a world that they often feel is chaotic and unpredictable. If they can control their physical environment with absolute precision, they might feel a temporary sense of stability that they lack in their relationships with other people. However, this is a brittle sense of peace. The moment someone enters their space, the performative aspect kicks back in, and the rigid order becomes a tool for impressing or intimidating guests rather than a source of genuine comfort. Everything they do in private is centered around the preservation of an ego that is constantly under threat of collapse. It is a delicate balancing act that requires an exhausting amount of energy. When we look at all of these behaviors, the mirror rituals, the dramatic self-talk, the addictive social media stalking, and the dark, repetitive revenge fantasies, we see a common thread. It is their way of rewriting the story to favor themselves, even if that rewriting happens only within their own wild imagination. Psychological research consistently shows that individuals with narcissistic traits are incredibly sensitive to even the slightest hint of rejection or criticism. And because of this, their anger does not fade away easily. When they find themselves alone without anyone there to impress, that suppressed anger turns inward and starts to fester. It creates dangerous, obsessive, and circular thoughts. These intense fantasies may never actually become real-world actions, but they reveal just how much deep-seated resentment and hidden hostility lie beneath the surface of their carefully constructed, charming mask. What makes these particular fantasies so frightening is just how detached from reality they can become. The narcissist does not see a situation the way most other people would. Instead, they constantly rewrite the narrative in their mind until they occupy both the role of the misunderstood hero and the suffering victim at the exact same time. This internal narrative acts as a protective shield for their fragile ego, but in doing so, it isolates them even further from the real world. When the burning need for control and external validation collides with the paralyzing fear of failure, their inner world transforms into a chaotic battlefield. Their solitude, which could otherwise be a peaceful space for genuine reflection or personal healing, becomes a stage for self-worship, unchecked rage, and endless mental rehearsals of revenge. It is a painful and exhausting cycle, and it is one that most narcissists never manage to break simply because they cannot bring themselves to admit that the problem exists in the first place. Superficial praise often keeps narcissists hooked on replaying those specific moments where they felt insulted, rejected, or criticized. This constant mental replay becomes a twisted form of emotional self-punishment, a way to keep their old wounds fresh and alive in their minds. Even when these memories continue to chip away at their already delicate sense of self-worth, they find themselves unable to let go of the pain. They might spend many long hours scrolling through old digital messages, re-watching past recordings, or writing down every perceived injustice in obsessive, painstaking detail. This fixation on past pain is not a form of quiet or peaceful reflection. It is an active, ongoing cycle that fuels their anger and strengthens their inner bitterness. Psychological studies demonstrate that this kind of rumination leads directly to a vicious loop of negativity, where every remembered insult grows larger and more distorted in their minds, becoming further proof that they are always the victim. For a narcissist, this self-imposed emotional torture becomes a warped form of validation. It keeps the story alive. The story they tell themselves that the world is inherently unfair and that they are the ones who have been wronged. Even though this belief is entirely delusional, it eventually becomes a fundamental part of who they are. In the privacy of their own space, the sixth and final disturbing behavior that narcissists often display is a form of secret self-glorification, practiced through distorted self-talk and ritual-like habits. When they are alone, away from the prying eyes of others, narcissists often perform little routines that are designed to prop up their fragile ego. This may include constant, lingering mirror gazing, reciting self-praise, or meticulously arranging their surroundings to match the perfect, idealized image they hold of themselves. Sometimes they drift into highly detailed fantasies about future success, grand victories, or elaborate revenge plots against those who once dared to doubt them. These private behaviors often come with an inner voice that constantly exaggerates their own greatness. Their internal monologue might sound confident on the surface, but it carries a faint, unmistakable undertone of deep fear and insecurity. The need to keep reinforcing their own worth becomes just like an addiction, a compulsion they feel they cannot stop. Every small action starts to feel like further proof of their immense importance. Yet, every single quiet moment also serves as a painful reminder of just how empty they feel inside. This private self-worship might look absurd or even sad to an outside observer, but in truth, it is a deep and unsettling sign of how completely self-deception and emotional damage have taken over their daily lives. When we look closely at these 6 disturbing things that narcissists often do when they are alone: excessive self-admiration, conflict-filled inner dialogue, obsessive online behavior, vengeful daydreaming, harmful coping, and ritualistic self-glorification, we see clearly that these are not just odd or quirky habits. They are significant symptoms of deep emotional pain and inner instability. Each of these behaviors, no matter how unpleasant or difficult to witness, provides us with a wide window into the complex mind of a narcissist. It shows us a person who is constantly caught between an inflated, performative public image and a private world that is full of internal torment. From a psychological perspective, these actions are unhealthy coping mechanisms, which are patterns learned over many years of manipulation, rejection, and unmet needs for genuine attention and connection. Clinical research also shows that people who exhibit narcissistic traits often experience a great deal of emotional chaos when they are left entirely to themselves. The behaviors we observe in their solitude are frequently the raw, unfiltered expressions of that deep inner suffering. And while these behaviors may seem objectively awful, they can also serve as signals, not necessarily of evil, but of profound, unresolved pain. A narcissist's actions, no matter how unpleasant they may be to those around them, are reflections of old emotional wounds and the exhausting, endless effort required to keep up a rigid mask of perfection. In many ways, these disturbing habits are actually silent, desperate cries for help. Behind all the outward arrogance and the need for control lies a person who is, in truth, deeply unhappy and incredibly afraid. As a professional in the field of psychology, I have seen how these behaviors can offer crucial insight into the inner world of those who are struggling with these difficult traits. They act as warnings, but they also serve as potential entry points for future healing. Understanding these hidden patterns is the most important first step in addressing the pain that lies underneath them. It serves as a reminder to us all that even the most destructive and harmful actions often stem from deep, frequently unhealed human experiences. Recognizing these behaviors in someone who has narcissistic tendencies can also be a very powerful tool for your own self-protection. If you find yourself close to someone who displays these unpleasant private habits, whether that is in a personal relationship or a professional setting, it is vital to remember that their actions are not about you. They are a direct result of their own internal chaos. Developing this kind of awareness helps you to set stronger, healthier boundaries and protect yourself on an emotional level. That might mean seeking support from a qualified mental health expert, making your personal boundaries very clear, or, when the situation necessitates it, stepping away from the toxic connection altogether. By doing this, you are effectively protecting your own peace of mind and taking part in creating a world that better understands how deep-seated trauma and insecurity can severely twist human behavior. In the end, those 6 disturbing things that narcissists do when they are alone: excessive self-admiration, conflicted inner dialogue, obsessive digital stalking, revenge-based fantasies, self-harming coping tactics, and ritualistic self-glorification, all reveal the raw, messy truth that exists beneath the mask. They show a hidden world that is filled with restlessness, insecurity, and persistent suffering. These are not just quirky or unusual behaviors. They are the echoing sounds of a lifetime spent chasing after validation and control. They remind us all of a sobering truth. Every single act, even the most unpleasant or confusing one, is just a part of a person's desperate struggle to handle the unbearable weight of their own distorted self-image. By shining a bright light on these hidden patterns, we gain not only a better understanding of the psychology behind narcissism, but also the inner power to recognize, process, and heal from the harm that such behaviors inevitably cause. Thank you so much for staying with me through this deep and comprehensive exploration of the 6 disturbing things that narcissists do when they are alone. Your time and your focused attention mean a great deal to me. If this discussion has helped you better understand these hidden behaviors, please do consider subscribing, liking this video, and sharing it with others who might also benefit from hearing this perspective. Your support helps us to grow a community that is built on the foundations of empathy, self-awareness, and the journey toward healing. I warmly invite you to share your own thoughts and personal experiences in the comments section below so that we can keep this important conversation alive and meaningful. Together, we can continue to better understand the delicate link between past trauma, fragile self-image, and the secret, private rituals of those who hide behind the mask of superiority. Thank you once again for choosing to be here with me today. I genuinely look forward to seeing you again in our future talks as we continue to explore more topics that encourage recovery, emotional strength, and a lasting sense of inner peace. There is so much more for us to uncover, and I am honored to be on this journey of awareness with you. Take care of yourself, stay mindful of your own needs, and remember that protecting your peace is always a priority. We have explored the reality of what happens when the audience disappears, and while it is a heavy topic, it is also a very liberating one. Once you see behind the curtain, the behavior of others loses its power to confuse or diminish you. You are in control of your own emotional landscape, and you have the ability to cultivate a life that is defined by your own truth, your own values, and your own healing. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a reminder that compassion is a bridge, but it is not a reason to allow yourself to be hurt. Understanding the why behind the behavior is meant to empower you, not to keep you trapped in a cycle of enabling or excusing mistreatment. Use this knowledge to build your own confidence, to sharpen your intuition, and to ensure that you are surrounding yourself with people who contribute to your growth rather than detracting from your well-being. Your commitment to learning and your desire to seek out the truth are clear signs of your own emotional maturity and your potential for a bright, healthy future. I hope you carry the insights we discussed today with you as you move through your week. Know that you are capable of navigating any difficult dynamic by staying rooted in your own reality.